Welcome. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I am happy that one more time I have the opportunity to be with the dear brothers and sisters of Ahlul Bayt Islamic Society of New England, ZERC, MIT Shia Muslim Association. As Dr. Musallai said, this will be the 10th lecture of the lecture series of Maryam in the Qur'an. The main topic we want to discuss will be regarding family of Jesus, and especially his brother James or Yaqub or Jacob, which is nicknamed or mulaqab with Just. So James, the Just brother of Jesus. But we have some introductory discussion actually when we take time, a little bit, maybe the third of the lecture. And then the 2/3 will be about this topic, and then maybe a little bit continue to the next lecture. The continuation, I will discuss more, but beforehand, for the occasion, I congratulate all of you, the coming of the blessed month of Sha'ban, and with joyous and important Milad, including today, which is the 3rd of Sha'ban, the birthday of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So just for the blessing, I have recorded 2 hadiths narrated from him. And the first one in Bahar al-Anwar says, God will help the person who cares about other people's needs, both in this world and the hereafter. And the second one came in Kashf al-Ghamma, is the best way of maintaining family ties is through visiting the ones who have cut ties with you and haven't visited you for a while. That is, you initiated to establish the tie. And usually works. If you, knowing this is good, you do it. I mean, a family, friends, so on. Without that, I will go to our lectures. As usual, I start a lecture with reciting these 2 verses. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ضرب الله مثلا للذين آمنوا امرأة فرعون إذ قالت رب ابني إنك بيتا في الجنة ونجني من فرعون وعمله ونجني من القوم الظالمين ومريم ابنة عمران التي أحسنت فرجها وفقد فيها من روحنا واستدعت بكلمات ربها وكتبه وكانت من القانتين. God cites an example for the faithful, the wife of Pharaoh, when she said, my Lord, build me a home near you in paradise and deliver me from Pharaoh and his conduct and deliver me from the wrongdoing Lot. And Mary, daughter of Imran, who guarded chastity of her womb, so we breathed into it of her spirit. She confirmed the words of her Lord and his books, and she was one of the obedient. As you may be aware, we discussed in the recent lectures the topic of Annunciation, that the angel of God telling Mary that she will conceive and will have a child. We discussed the birth of Jesus and the events surrounding that. We discussed again issues after the birth, nativity, childhood. Although I will come back to it a little bit today. And then, as usual, we kind of list this is the list of the verses in the Quran related to Hazrat Maryam. It is listed in chronological order, and then the 2 most important surah regarding Hazrat Maryam, one Surah 19, Surah Hazrat Maryam, and Surah 3rd, Surah Al-Imran. And then, as I said, this is chronological order, which between Western and scholarship and Muslim scholarship, just Sunni or Shia, is not much different. The green ones are Meccan surahs, and then the pink ones are Medinan surahs. These were the orders the verses were discussed in the last these series lectures. Last lecture we discussed this verse. Says and we finished it. We have to kind of discuss these, but for few lectures a little bit maybe deviate. And then today I want to go back a little bit to some of the verses in chapter 19 around here, and then there is one point which we haven't discussed, is maybe 28 to 33, 26 to 33, and there is one point of intertextuality which I haven't discussed, and I think is important to do that. But before that, I want you to remind you that 5 of the main problems or points which kind of the lecture series want to address, because there are many different aspects you can go through, and then so one is which we don't have time to go, but what is the issue? Who are the family of Imran? What its members are, or corresponding to that, what about, we can talk about children of Hazrat Maryam alayhi salam, or family of Jesus, or brother of Jesus. Well, actually, that's the topic we're going to discuss today. And next lecture, last lecture, we've truly discussed the son of Aaron. I think this is completed. The faith of true Christianity will be partially discussed today. And actually, with it today, the Joseph the Carpenter, whether his existence, what verses are related to him or not. Kind of we have covered, so but still some of the stuff we do here is related to that. And the topic which partially is motivating and pushing we're pushing that direction, and will be, because the occasion of 15 of Shaban, maybe from next lecture, or most probably from the end of the second half of the next lecture, and the lecture after that, we want to discuss this issue of the lineage of the mother of the 12th Imam, Imam Mahdi, which she hadith has mentioned that she's the descendant of, I mean, usually people understood the companion of Jesus, Simon the Cephas, Simon the Peter. But what I contend or kind of claim that most probably it must be Simon the Clophas, or Simon or Shamun, the brother of Jesus, the one's called brother of Jesus. This is most probable. But the whole issue here, we will discuss it because of the occasion. So maybe from the second half of this next lecture and the lecture after that, which kind of before and after of 15 of Shaban, will be inshallah related to that. And then we will have totally the series with 14 lectures, which will go back to some of those verses in Surah Al-Ma'idah to finish the whole series. Now, you know what I want to discuss now? Look, the miracle of Jesus speaking the credo, which we saw it, but the whole idea is this. Look, if you want to objectively put it to looking at, and is this, when Mary came and has a child with herself, and it doesn't matter whether she was married or engaged, or I mean whether Joseph Carpenter was there or not there, existed, or she was not engaged at all, or something like that. When she claims this child has been born without father, conceived without father, and born without father, it needs some strong evidence and miracle. And then, so we know the Quran has supplied that very strong miracle. But I want to look to what is happening in the Gospels and the Proto-Gospel of James, and then see the intertextuality, because also help to understand one part of it, of the Quranic verses better, the context. And so we're coming back to this because there was some reference to it in the last lecture, and some of the lectures before, which I haven't addressed it. So mostly what we are looking is the Proto-Gospel of James. But to refresh our mind, I prefer to read the translation of some of the verses. I would just read, although we know Jesus talked after birth to Mary herself, and maybe consoling her and advising her how to deal with humans if they ask you. So that's the verses 26 and before. But I've started with 27 is the moment she's confronting the people. And then, as I said before, you have to understanding what type of story it is. If you're thinking is the detailed story and the main parts are there, this narration is, you will have one understanding. Or if you think this is a very brief, selective, just allusion to some outline of the story, and some details are put out or not. So story looks consistent of content. That is, for this last 1,000 years, many people have read it, and you feel like that. But if you do intertextuality with the Christian sources, you can see some of it is just allusion or selection. I mean, I said these examples maybe second time or third time. Look, you can say that the story of the last 200 years of Iran, that a prince which is hostage after the ruler of Shiraz escaped, and then he got power, and then they had to fight the new dynasty had to fight with Russians, lost many lands, the people had some revolution, so the constitution established, but an army general make a coup and get the new government established, and then he and his son ruled for 50 some years. Then people upset did a revolution. Then there was a war, a country attack, and but the people resisted, and then a judge became the president, and then he passed away in accident, and then a doctor become a president. Okay, so all of it is, if you know the history of Iran, understand what I said. But if you don't know the history of Iran, this is kind of mysterious. And now, although the way I said it, you clearly see this is a long span of time. 200 years was finished, established into three sentences. So the point here is, you have to. I said even the story of Joseph, for example, there are gaps of 10 years, step by step. A couple of those long gaps are there. One time when he's go to Egypt, and the other time when he's become in charge, till his brothers coming at least 7, 8, 9, 10 years, because you need 7 years of good time and some years of bad. The Quran just goes from one scene to other. So the point is that this, you have to be careful. Maybe this atat is a little bit more complicated. It doesn't make sense necessarily the moment she gave birth, she go to the square or to the temple. But I'm going to show you. So I want just read it, the translation. And I'm not saying this. It is just read the translation. Have those comments in mind. Then carrying him, she brought. So I'm going to this part, verse 27. Then carrying him, she brought him to her people. They said, "O Mary, you have certainly come up with an odd thing." And so this is verse 27, Surah to Maryam 19. And then verse 28, "O sister of Aaron's lineage, your father was not an evil man, nor was your mother unchaste." And thereat she pointed to him. They said, "How can we speak to one who is yet a baby in the cradle?" He said, then Jesus started to talk. He said, "Indeed, I'm a servant of God. He has given me the book and made me prophet. He has made me blessed wherever I may be, and he has enjoined me to maintain the prayer and to pay the zakat as long as I live, and good to my mother. He has not made me self-willed and wretched. Peace to me the day I was born, and the day I die, and the day I'm raised alive." And then there is one more sentence later on, but we got the gist of it. The fact a child talks in the cradle, which is absolute miracle, vindicate the mother, and then child kind of indicate what the mother said, and the whole issue is settled. And I said, logically, it doesn't matter if there is a Joseph, not Joseph, engaged, or so on. When you claim such a thing, this kind of miracle is needed. The context where these speeches happen, just Quran said, فَأَتَتْ بِهِ قَوْمَهَا, I mean, go to his people, to her people. But where are your people? That she went back to Nazareth, go back to temple. So we can look to the Gospels. But the only thing I want to mention again, this we said it before, for the context of what we're going to read, especially for the Gospel of James. Look, because the whole issue of the existence of the Joseph the Carpenter, for the whole issue of family of children of Mary and brother of Jesus is important. So kind of all these arguments going around there. So, but here I want to refresh your mind at the stages, 3 stages of marriage in the Jewish tradition. The Jewish marriage involved 3 basic steps. First, the 2 families agreed to the union. So it's a little family thing. Second, a public announcement was made that these 2, for example, going to get married. At this point, the couple was pledged. This was similar to engagement today, except that relationship could be broken only through death or divorce, even though sexual relations were not permitted. So it's like something in between. This is like after Shari is done, but no arusi or something like that. Third, the couple was married and began living together because Mary and Joseph were engaged with the second stage. And then because Mary doesn't have parents, but the whole process of the temple, that's the second takaful and the lot they did in the verse 44 Surah Al Imran was essentially after you can read. There is another gospel, we didn't go through that as much. The gospel of the Mary, or the nativity of Mary. No, the Gospel of Mary. That explained that more detail. I mean, I forgot about that, so maybe I could put up that one too. But it's very more detail. But that the fact that after Joseph made the lot, they knew that Mary was going to be his wife. They start to go through the process like regular uh, marriage. Somebody proposed, and then the steps we're going through. So they were at the second step. At least the idea is that they were at the second stage. Third, the couple was married and began living together because Mary and Joseph were engaged. Mary, apparent unfaithfulness, carried the severe social stigma. Still, in the second stage, was important for them. That according to Jewish civil law, Joseph had the right to divorce her, and the Jewish authorities could have had her stoned to death. So at least it seems there wasn't much difference. We are at second or first stage. Until you're not third stage, there couldn't be any relationship. So that's the severity we see. Now, in the look, we saw some of it. So I'm not going uh, to go to all the details because I want to save time. But because I want to discuss what happens after they give birth. I mean, we saw there was some context, some miracles when Luke told the story. Matthew doesn't have much, really, except is very individual. Except something angel come to the dream of Joseph. It's mostly Joseph. Tell them accept your wife and the child, and then they escape to Egypt and so on. Here there are some shepherds. Here angels told them, for example, when the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, let's go to Bethlehem and see the things has happened which the Lord has told about. So whether a shepherd or saying something. So they hurried to find Mary and Joseph, and the baby was lying in the manger or something like that, just the birth, they want to justify it like that. Okay, it's miraculous, but it's not necessarily uh, all depends on testimony, and then somebody sees shepherd or so on. Okay, I know at some level everything depends on testimony, but what I want to say is this here, 21. Maybe the context verses of the Quran are discussing that when the people start to see Mary, when they start to rebuke her, but although we see the look is very different, and then when you go to the Gospel of James, a little bit becomes more, because look is very cordial. There's nothing harsh against them. It seems everything's settled down. There's no problem over there. But let me read this and see. So there is not much intertextuality with the canonical gospel, but we see a little bit more with the proto-gospel of James. On the eighth day, so this is important, on the eighth day after Jesus was born, when it was time to circumcise the child, so it's a Jewish tradition, he was named Jesus, the name the angel had given him before he was conceived. We have something like that at Riga too, Prophet recommended cutting the hair of the child and giving equal weight, some silver charity. When the time came for the purification rites required by the law of Moses, Joseph Mary took him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. So maybe that verse of the Quran, when they come to the people, must be this time. It could be. At least, as I said, when we're talking in last lecture, Guillaume D and Western scholarship, they think it's that time. That the whole issue of the Harun, when they telling Mary, you bring something strange, happened during this time. But the point is that this context of this story doesn't tell anything like that, the one I'm reading from Luke. And it's not necessary to be like that. You could be anywhere people know you say you that. But we see the Gospel of James somehow is the middle. We can get somehow a better situation. And then it's the verse goes, as it is written in the law of the Lord, every firstborn male is to be consecrated to the Lord to offer a sacrifice in keeping with what is said to the law of the Lord, a pair of doves of two young pigeons. So they sacrificed some birds to the temple, doves or pigeons too, for the sake of the child. Now then they continue. The story goes like this: there was a man in Jerusalem called Simeon. He was righteous. Most of the sentences or somehow the miraculous events are happening of the word of Simeon. So the only thing I want you to remember, because I don't want to go through this, we have once partially gone through that. You can look at yourself that, okay, they go together to the temple just to do the circumcision of the child, giving the sacrifice, and nothing negative against them. So everything was settled, but that's surprising because a bunch of shepherds have just saw them, and it was a remote place or Bethlehem. How so you see, look, it's according to that harshness which exists, and Joseph himself was married. So why this reception? But okay, let's go forward. Now we go to. I'm not reading Simeon. It's detailed, but uh, ignore it. Okay, let's go to the Gospel of James because here is more interesting, and that's also the claim they had. Maybe Qur'an has more intertextuality with the Gospel of James, and then I go one section before just to get the context, and this is the first miracle. Again, the angel come to Joseph, and night came upon him. Joseph came back home and then see his Mary is pregnant, and he's get very worried, and they're in the second stage, and he's thinking what he should do, and then Mary told him the truth, and then he somehow confuses, and then from one side thinks, okay, what about Mary is saying the truth? From the other side says, if I let authorities know this has happened, they may stone her, and then what I can do. But the law of God said I have to let people know. So he's debating himself. And night came upon him, and behold, an angel of the Lord appears to him in a dream, saying, be not afraid for this maiden, for that which is in her is of the Holy Spirit, and she bring forth a son, and you shall call his name glorified the Jesus, for he will save his people from the God of Israel, who had given him this thing. And Joseph arose from sleep and grace, and he kept her. Okay. Now, so this is things settled down. This is all before birth. We have to be careful. Yeah, this is also, we see in the story going to temple was after birth. The Quran clearly, when Mary goes to people, start to rebuking her, is after the birth, and then they're telling her what strange thing you brought, and then nicknaming her or telling her Ukhta Harun. But what I want to conclude, I think those conversations were on happening to the temple. And as we will see here, something like that here, but here again we'll see nothing exactly match here, and maybe Quran is correcting these guys, but then you see the big commotion here is before giving birth, and that's what we are going to read. And in one sense, I think we remember some hadiths were there too. In one sense, I think it could be true, except you say there was no sign of pregnancy in Mary. We had the story for Nargis Khatoon, the mother of 12th Imam, that because the caliphs were observing the family, the house, they're looking for the child, so they couldn't find any sign of pregnancy. If that's the case, that could be the case, but in one sense, it makes sense that at least the Christian stories that Joseph noticed it, that and Elizabeth knew, that some people in the family knew or have noticed that, is not that in the whole 9 months Mary was alone and nobody knew about it. So I'm saying none of these stories are consistent, but let's see what the picture here is, and I will explain it then. So there is a scribe. Maybe Joseph was regularly going to the, as we understood in the Gospel of James, they're not in Jerusalem area, they're in Nazareth in the north, and about 80 kilometer distance, and then the whole synagogues as being the beloved or congregation, and people used to go for their, for example, prayer. Like, for example, people go to the Jama'ah prayer regularly. Usually, used to be people do that. For example, working in the bazaar, stuff like that. And then Joseph hasn't appeared for a while, it seems. And that's the scribe came to him as a religious authority. But exactly what is meaning is a little we had the time to discuss it. But Anas the scribe came to him and said, "We have not appeared in our assembly. He asked me why you're not coming anymore to the meetings or synagogue assembly." And Joseph said to him, "Because I was weary of my journey and rested the first day." So they knew he had come back, so anticipated he come to the meeting, to the prayers. He didn't come back. But it seems this Anas guy come to speak about Joseph sees Mary. And he turned and saw that Mary was with the child. And then so apparently Mary was a child, and apparently the pregnancy signs were visible. He ran away to the priest because he knows what happened. There's a second stage, and said to him, "Joseph, whom you vouched for has committed a grievous crime." Go to the priest, upper ranking guy. "Oh, this Joseph, you so much say good thing about him, supporting him, has done something very sinful." And the priest said, what is that, how so? And he said, "He has defiled the virgin whom he received out of the temple of the Lord, and he has married her by stealth and has not revealed it to the sons of Israel." So the fact that is the time they start to publicly live together should be declared, like that public ceremony and thing. But this, it seems, he wants to say that Joseph didn't wait, and that's a scene. And then priest doesn't believe that. He said, "Really, Joseph have done this?" Then this scribe said, "Okay, send your people and to bring them here or check the Mary." And then when the officers went away and found out it as he said, and they brought her along with Joseph to tribunal. Okay, they go check over there. So you see, this is publicized. But this is not before birth of the child. But you see, it's negative, hostile. And some people of the community know them. This is more the context Quran saying, but the timing is not matching. Then so brought them to kind of tribunal. Now they have to kind of put them in court and say what they have to do. And priest say, "Mary, why have you done this? Look, this at least somehow match the way people are talking." And then to Mary, and why have you brought your forgotten? What have you brought to your forgotten the Lord your God? You that was reared in the soul, low and holy of holies. Reminding him. And then if he accepts it, Quran just give the gist of it, reminding her that you were raised in the holy of holies. You received food from the hand of angel, which we know. And that's exactly you anticipate when people rebuke, and if no Mary, they said, and they heard the hymns and danced before him. Why have you done this? Such a lofty girl, which Quran gives the gist of it, Ukhta Harun, it means that, or Mary, your parents are good. And she wept bitterly, saying, "As the Lord my God lives, I am pure before him." But the timing doesn't match Quran. You have to say maybe the whole story somehow changed, but and no, not a man. And the priest said to Joseph, "Why have you done this?" And Joseph said, "As the Lord lives, I am pure concerning her." So most probably Quran is correcting them, but at least this is the scene which is more matching with that scene over there. Then said the priest, "Bear not false witness, but speak the truth. You have married her by stealth and has not revealed it to the son of Israel, has not bowed your head under the strong hand that your seed might be blessed." And Joseph was silent. So he started accusing the guy. And Joseph and the priest said, "Give up the virgin whom you received out of the temple of the Lord." And Joseph burst into tears. Now they tell him he should give her up, give her away. But Joseph doesn't want to do that, start to tear. And the priest says, "Okay, I have to test you guys." It seems that we have it in Farsi, examples in the story of Shahnam and story Shahnam and so on. They give them a poison or ordeal, and then to test them if they survive, the shows of innocence. Like we have in the Siavash, I think went to some test like that, or so they give them both of them, and they give them some drink, and then send them to the desert and see whether they can survive And this is the miracle. Still, uh, and then uh, and then it seems that he shall make manifest your sins, your eyes. And the priest took the water and gave to Joseph drink and sent him away to the hill country and returned unhurt. And he gave to Mary also the drink and sent her away to the hill country. She returned unhurt. And then all the people wondered that the sin did not appear in them. So it seems somehow they believe, but this is very elaborate story and not straight, more complication. And what does it mean? I haven't actually looked at it. It should be what the custom was. Whether such a custom exists. So this is an elaborate story. And the priest said, if the Lord God has not made manifest your sin, neither do I do judge you. So both of them were successfully coming out of the ordeal. They don't show any sign of sin. They survive. The priest says, okay, if the God has not manifest your sins, I'm not going to judge you. And Joseph took Mary away to his own house, rejoicing, glorifying the God of Israel. And then, but the point is that this, we have seen the story of the giving birth because we spent a lot of time about the cave and the Charisma church and so on. But this all started after this. So that is the checking or the ordeal or the rebuke of people happens before they give birth, but just a sign of pregnancy. In one normal sense, it can be true. So for knowing somebody pregnant, you don't need to they give birth. But it could be because we know this story has been edited a lot, and maybe kept the whole negative tough scene or confrontation. But the timing has been changed. Somebody took it. Quran is different, so we cannot really stretch and put them on together. But because we have to see. But I'm thinking there is a possibility that they went to the temple, and the Quran when they're rebuking her. I mean, it's not necessary they can go to synagogue. Temple looks at temple. Book of just James that it seems local synagogue. So just to complete the story, that look, the intertextuality of the location and the timing is not clearly there. Look is very different. So again, this says Quran is if the people want to think, for example, Quran has copied from this, it doesn't match at all. At all with Luke. Luke is, and then Luke is doesn't consistent with anything, with itself because it should be. This is a sin punishable as we read, but then so they're very lightly treated. For the Gospel of James is more to the culture point, but the timing is earlier, and then there is after that we saw there is also an attempt to prove virginity, but that's really not our case in the way that we did. Those are really very story added to story. So this was a leftover from before. Now we come to the main topic of today's lecture. Is essentially we will look to the family of Jesus, family of Imran. I want to see family of Imran is consisting only Imran, his wife Anna, or Mary and Jesus, or more, and then what about this brother of Jesus, which Gospel mentions, his storybooks mention, and the character of James, which is very pious. Joseph Solah, among the Solah, very lofty character, and then also the true faith of the Christianity. We don't go to detail of that because it's not about Jesus and Christianity and what happened after Jesus, but the function they have. Because to understanding Al Imran, like Bani Hashim, we need Bani Hashim to understand Imam Ali, Imam Hussein, and the descendants, Imam Hassan, and the descendants too, to understand what's with Bani Hashim more completely. So as far as I can go, some of it is summarized. That this story itself is interesting. The picture you see, as I understand, the one to the, at least my view, is left is Jesus. The one to the right is James, his brother. But it means they understood some of the, he was with them, with Jesus and his side. And Regarding James, there are more scholarship. Uh, I do the limited one. I'm not going to go too much about it because it needs separate lecture. But I have to do something about the other brother. We'll see that for the next lecture to prepare the groundwork for the story of Nargis Khatoon too. And look, let's read this verse because at the early part we want to a little bit mention what happened to true Christianity because that question is important. Okay, where is we know that at this Islamic view that the divinity of Jesus, Trinity, and some a lack of any uh, Sharia, rejection of all the dietary law, purity laws, uh, some bring some questions that the Christianity we have is not the one was revealed or what Jesus following it. And modern scholarship also shows that, and in the Bible you can see that Jesus is really sticking to the halakha, the Jewish law. Uh, you don't want to break that like that. But again, we don't go to that story. But this verse is interesting, related. It said like, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم كذلك جعلنا لكل نبي عدوا شياطين الإنس والجن يوحي بعضهم إلى بعض زخرف القول غرورا ولو شاء ربك ما فعلوه فذرهم ما يفترون. That is how for every prophet we appointed his enemy, the devils from among humans and jinn, who inspire each other with flashy words deceptively. Had your Lord wished, they would not have done it, so leave them with what they fabricate. Regarding Jesus, it's interesting. This person we think is mostly the so-called character of Paul, which but is after Jesus. So those enemy and devils among human jinn, maybe even not working in the time of the prophet, but after him, distorting his message. So in one sense, Muawiyah's actions or Yazid's actions were more, which distorting the religion of prophet was more happened after the time of prophet. And that's also one meaning of the hadith, Usayna minni ana min Husayni. Ana min Husayni part is understood that Imam Hussein saved Islam, the real mission of Prophet Muhammad. That is, we have a correct image of Prophet Muhammad. Islam is alive because of the sacrifice of Imam Hussein. So, and here we have the story. And then, I'm not going to go to the Gospel of Barnabas, but, modern scholarship raised question, doubt its authenticity, but I think, I'm not sure it's so simple as they say, because there have been records, very ancient pre-Islamic records of popes mention such a gospel existed. So when they said such a gospel existed, it cannot be, they claim it's fabrication in medieval times, but when you have the records, it was existed. It's not so simple. Maybe some level of it is additional to it, but the core of it maybe existed. But you can see this gospel from the first chapter and to the last chapter is talking what have Paul has done. So it says Barnabas. Maybe I read fast. True gospel of Jesus called Christ, a new prophet sent by God to the world, according to the description of Barnabas the apostle. Barnabas, apostle of Jesus Nazarene, called Christ. To all them that dwell upon the earth, desired peace and consolation. Dearly, he's writing to some people, the great and wonderful God, and during these past days visited us by his prophet Jesus Christ, a great mercy of teaching and miracles. But some people, but deceived by Satan using his teaching under pretense of piety. Satan under pretense of piety, distorting the message, and are preaching most impious doctrine, calling Jesus Son of God, repudiating the circumcision order of God forever, and permitting every unclean meat, among whom also Paul has been deceived. And the way this gospel is written, St. Paul maybe initially wasn't, but then changed. But okay. Whereof I speak not without grief, for which cause I am writing the truth which I have seen and heard in the intercourse that I had with the Jesus, in order that you may be saved. So Barnabas was worried that this message of Paul is distorting the whole Christianity. So these are happening, at the same time. James, the brother of Jesus, there and as the leadership of the church. This is the formative years, like the issues you have after the death of Prophet Muhammad and the 30 years and after that. And then even the last chapter, again, he says, the Gospel of Barnabas, for certain evil men pretending to be disciples preach that Jesus died and rose not again. So some people say died but not rose, which is not Quranic. This is Jews mostly. Yeah. Others preach that he really died but rose again. Okay, the Quranic seems says he didn't die but rose. Others preach yet preach that Jesus is the Son of God, among whom is Paul deceived. So that this Quran doesn't believe Son of God. But we, as much as I've written, that preach we to those who fear God, that they may be saved in the last day of judgment. So, I mean, if the Gospel of Barnabas truth is the document wants to, the true Christianity it's itself is an interesting book. Another time we can discuss about it. Keep lectures, but this is also a picture of Paul. And as I remember, I couldn't find the source. Actually, the picture, contrary to think, is not very. This is from a group which do not completely look positive to Paul. Most Christianity does. It's like second caliph is revered by many good large portion of Muslims, but not with the others. But let's go forward. Just to mention, Paul. So it's a kind of, we can say, it's rivalry or antagonism between Paul and James, brother of Jesus, and this is this story. And then because Paul didn't see Jesus, is contemporary to James, and then Paul has very important, crucial role in New Testament. Look, we said the Bible is divided in two parts: Old Testament, New Testament. Old Testament Jewish scripture, New Testament Christian. But to see it better, let's see the Christian scripture only, the New Testament. They are cutting through in three different diagrams. But look, we have the four Gospels, which we have seen, and then the book of Acts, which is written by the author of Luke, which explain what happened after Jesus, which actually today we are going to see them. But look, the large portion of these green ones and these green ones are letters of Paul. I mean, some are certain, and 7 of them I think are certain is his. The other 6 they say is ascribed to him, but so they're not even his. Somebody write like him. So you see, the majority of out of 27 books of New Testament, I think 13 are Paul, and you see they're categorized here. And then there are 2 books which are of interest to us. Maybe not true. James and Jude. These are claimed to be written by the brothers of Jesus. So there are 4 brothers Jesus had: James, Joseph, and Jude, and also Simon. Simon and James and Jude will be important for us. We don't have much information about Joseph. Maybe he was died sooner. Maybe he was contemporary brother of James and lived with James and died sooner. He was younger, but the point is this: the 2 are ascribed, have some book. Although Jude book is very short. James also not that long. So you see this purple one and brown one are different. And then you can see the structure. The bulk of it is Paul letters, and then they have some Gospels explaining, like Sira, the life of Jesus, and companions. And then you need to include something on the famous companions of Jesus. Look, 2 of his family. And this also is the 4th book, very different about future. And then Peter and John. So Peter and John, you will see today the triumvirate, the leader of the church, according to book of Acts, are James, Peter, and John. The real leader is James, and then these 2 are big companions, apostles, or disciples of Jesus, not technically in his family. So the 3 are the leader of the church in the period which Paul is there. So but these are ascribed. We don't know really these are from Peter or John, but at least they need something like that. So that's the structure. And the timing is here. If we want, we come back. I don't think for now, these are too detailed. We don't need it. And then I have this diagram now. We maybe look at it a different form. Jesus was born in 4 or somewhere 6 common era, passing away somewhere between 30 to 33 common era. Paul converted. He was persecuting Christians for a few years, but converted to Christianity at 4 years at least, and maybe more after the death of Jesus or rising to heaven. And then Paul letters are the oldest documents of New Testament, and that's this New Testament essentially influenced by Paul. And many of these guys at the end are associates of Paul. And this part, which maybe not close associate of Paul, the one who combined to the book, they want to put the consensus ijma. So they need to collect from different factions to everybody kind of at least come to board or not completely opposing. So they need to include something from the family to and so on. But that time they did it. They're not as strong, but it's because they did it 300 years later as Jesus. They did it 4th century, but all of these books were circulating from 1st and 2nd century, as we see here. The time we have to have in mind, look, is the death of Jesus, 30 to 33, the conversion of Paul, 27, and the martyrdom of James, 62, and then the death of Paul and Peter, which we're not sure even that Paul really was died as the way they claimed, or Peter, in Rome, 66, and the Jewish revolt and destruction of Jerusalem. You know, the Jews rebelled against Rome in 66. The Romans defeat the rebellion and destroyed completely Jerusalem after Jews. That the diaspora of Jews started. They started to spread around the world. They went back to Jerusalem until this recent last century when Zionism came. So this around 30, 40 years, maybe 33 years, especially if you look at from here, 30 years to the death of James or Paul is an important period we're looking. And then what I'm doing is to show the importance of James and somehow its function, his character, that and through Christianity, somehow motivating, okay, maybe I'm doing it from reverse direction. Maybe the truth we should consider he must be a child of Mary with this function, with this importance, with this piety, to make self more receptive to have Mary had children. I mean, it could be their children of Joseph from earlier marriage, but I'm more inclined to these are biological children. So the other ones, last times we used to look at this one, these were more later ones, but for now I don't think we need to go there. There are sources, I've used some of them, I've used them, but I'm not using everything today from all of these. But if you want somebody to read, yeah, there is a couple of other books about James too, but for now, the one I have mostly come earlier from these, and then much from Tabor, which I also use in the Farsi, and then this is a good book on Paul, really. Yeah, Tabor books are good, and the Josephus historian, you know, that's Jewish historian contemporary to James and related with Jesus, but working for Romans, so joining Romans, and then have access to emperor, and wrote a history of Jews that acceptable or you know makes sense for the Romans. So he softened some corners, changed ideas, but he's very respectful as James, and then he's actually in that sense James is more historical than Jesus. So let's go faster. I know there are some details, but you know, the name of the brothers or family of Jesus, as we showed before, has come twice in the New Testament, the canonical Gospels. One is the Mark, which is the earliest one. One is the Matthew, and then they name the brothers of Jesus. The names are more or less similar. The order is a little bit different. Although, yeah, the Mark says, "Isn't this the carpenter?" That referring to Jesus. Isn't this Mary's son and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, Simon? So they're referencing Jesus with these four other brothers. Now that can be suggest these are half brothers. I mean, this is long discussion about this stuff. I don't think we can go, but a little bit maybe next lecture from some parts. Aren't his sisters here with us? So it includes their sisters, but at least more than one. That usually people refer to, well, it could be more, but and the context is that they took office. I think it's another story. I mean, we said it before because they were from the same city, And this is looking down. Say, okay, we know this guy. This is a carpenter. I know his children. Now he's becoming prophet. That's the same way that every city usually doesn't welcome a prophet from its own people, does not usually welcome the prophet because they have seen him from childhood. A kind of jealousy rise, oh, how he has become prophet. And then the same Matthew, isn't this carpenter's son? Isn't he mother named Mary? And aren't his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? And you see, only here the order is changed, and that's not a big deal. But there are some ideas people think Simon is older than Judas. Aren't all these, because we need to discuss about Simon. That's my claim, is that mother of Imam Mahdi is descended from Simon. This Simon. Aren't all these sisters with us? Where did this man get all these things? You see clearly the sentence they're saying. We know these guys. They live with us. Suddenly, you know how their source of knowledge, and they took offense at him. So you see, these are the two references to the brothers at the canonical Gospels. But we see there are more about James in Book of Acts. But look, I don't use the Abu. I go with James. Jacob is easier English name. This is somehow Jacob. Yabu become Jacob, but then Jacob become English James in some complicated change of the phonetics. James, the brother of Jesus, commonly called the just, although just here means Adam, maybe Arab, but it's more Saleh, maybe works more pious and righteous. Righteous maybe works better. So called the just, although his designation nowhere appears in the New Testament, this designation is not from New Testament. And then you have to say it need not be, because the New Testament is written from the perspective of rival or somewhat enemy, what we will see. New Testament, much of documents are influenced by Paul, at least from the Paul Carter and group coming out. Eusebius is a famous historian of church. Much of the things we have from early Christianity history, because of him, is the 3rd, 4th century, says that the 4th century. Eusebius says that he was called by this name by all who knew him, even from the days of Christ. So this is the whole issue. For example, we're talking Abu Turab, which is used from Imam Ali. When was this nickname given to Imam Ali? He says that people start to call James at the time of Jesus as just from the day of Christ, because of his great piety and devotion. But regardless of its origin, the name just has been associated with James, brother of Jesus, from biblical times. There can be no doubt that, here there can be no doubt that there was the James who became the leader of Jerusalem church after year 42. I believe he's the leader from the death of or going to heaven of Jesus. But this is another source, when you go to Tabor, more I agree with what I'm saying. But at least, but maybe we don't have any document to say, But we know at the document of the Book of Acts, which can be pinpointed to 42 AD, clearly James is the leader of the church in Jerusalem. So in one sense, I'm saying James is the successor of Jesus, leading the church and kind of representing maybe the true Christianity. And in the 2nd and 3rd, 4th centuries, considerable discussion arose. Now, again, I discussed this because many discussion they have when they call them brother, what kind of relationship they have, and see 3 views that were dominant and still is present with us. In the 2nd, 3rd, 4th centuries, considerable discussion arose as the relationship between Jesus and brothers. This controversy becomes significant connection with the rise of the doctrine of the person of Christ. The problem which presented itself was, how could Jesus have brothers and sisters if he were divine? Divine, or even doesn't have father. But 3 theories concerning this relationship were propounded. The Epiphanians view hold that no blood relationship exists between Jesus and brothers, but these brothers were in reality sons of Joseph by a former wife. So there is no real connection. It's very not half brothers, step brother. The Helvetian who held that these children were blood brothers of Jesus. They were Jesus from Mary, so they're half brothers. The Helvetians, which I'm pushing now toward Helvetian view. The Hieronymian view, made popular originally by Jerome, held that the Lord's brethren were his cousins. being sons of Mary, the wife of Alphaeus, and sister of Mary, the mother of Jesus. This have, I don't want to go further on to that. This is like, there are some characters, and then we don't know his name or nickname. Uh, and then two Marys. I think Jerome represented a view that they preferred Mary never be virgin, but not only Mary, they preferred Joseph, uh, her husband, because also he was a very saintly man. He also be somehow not engaged, for example, marriage even before Mary. So, I mean, actually, this is maybe more dominant because the process of Jerome in Catholic Church. And in one sense, cousins, okay, in Shia tradition, also we have Imam Ali was a cousin, and then in that sense. But I really think that we have to go between these two, and now I'm more inclined to Ilvinian or, I mean, one option, if you accept their existence. But anyway, for now, I don't discuss between these. I've discussed a lot in the context of Christianity. For what I'm saying for a while, maybe the next 20 minutes stuff, maybe you have to shorten it, but it is good a little bit to have the background of Christianity and Judaism at that time, and then the Christianity, and then see what happened, why it's changed, and why Paul became influential. You know, really the book we have tells something about that period in the Bible is the book of Acts, which, as I said, was written by the author of the book of Luke. And this is one of the few, or the only one explicitly the author is identified and mentions he's writing this book. And then kind of he said, I wrote this book for you, so and so, to explain what happened. So clearly, the author identified himself for whom his book is written and why it is written. And essentially want to tell the story of early Christianity, but about 60, 70, 80 years after the events, or a little bit, okay, the book of Acts, maybe 40, 50. According to book of Acts, Christian community after Jesus was divided into separate and distinct camps. This is important. The Hebrews, which the Jewish people living in Jerusalem, the locals, the Hebrews, the term used by Acts to refer to Jerusalem-based believers under the leadership of James and apostles, and also essentially all the early followers of Jesus. And the Hellenists, those Jews who came from diaspora and spoke Greek as the primary language. So there were Jews coming for the visitation, going to the for the pilgrimage, for other stuff, living outside Palestine, sometimes get rich and more exposed to Greek culture. You will see it in Lebanon much more. You have a big, sizable Lebanese community outside Lebanon, like the U.S., in maybe South America, West Africa, many other places, and they occasionally travel to Lebanon. So then you can see the two groups can be there, interact with each other. And Iranians we have too, but they're not so much. Anyway, so the point is this, Hellenists and Hebrews, the two groups. And then you can see, as this one clearly accesses, the leader of Hebrews, the one which is the Jesus is among them, all the apostles are among them, is James. The Hellenists are somehow influenced by Greek culture. And actually, these are the ones Paul have more attention to. In the end, maybe more influenced by Paul. They somehow, we can say, become Hellenized Jews or living outside. It was not just the language that separated the Hebrews from Hellenists. Yeah, actually, the language they talk was different. Like the one coming from some America, maybe English is the more stronger, or the first language. The one in Lebanon is Arabic. There was not just language that separated the Hebrews from Hellenists. The Hebrews were primarily peasants, farmers, fishermen, transplants in Jerusalem from Judean, Galilean countryside. You know, the followers of Jesus were first even not from Jerusalem, were outsiders from Galilee, Nazareth, and then they were not upper classes, the middle class, lower classes. But after Jesus raised to heaven, they decided to stay to Jerusalem. They all moved. So even in Jerusalem, one side that seems among the Jews or Palestine or outsiders or second class. But the other side, these Hellenist ones were very often wealthy, living in Roman Empire. Some had citizenship of Rome, like Paul itself. The Hellenists were more sophisticated, urban, better educated, certainly wealthier, as evidenced by their ability to travel hundreds of kilometers to make pilgrimage at the temple. You can see that, for example, Lebanese or Iranian community living outside Iran and then coming back to Iran. It was, however, the division in language that would ultimately prove decisive, differentiating the communities. You can see the scriptures that become Greek, and already they were translating Bible to the Greek. Look, Greek was the English language of lingua franca. I mean, Romans are other; they don't talk Greek, but that's the language of administration, language of education, language of science. So it was the language. The Hellenists who worshipped Jesus in Greek relied on a language that provided a vastly different set of symbols, metaphors than either Aramaic or Hebrew. The different language gradually led to difference in doctrine as the Hellenists began to meld the Greek-inspired worldviews with the Hebrews already in the idiosyncratic reading of the Jewish scripture. So that's one source of a difference. And then the character of Paul, which we cannot go through that. He did lots of missionary. Paul refers to James. Some of his sentences, let me, I go faster. I think maybe sometime later on, maybe have a thorough discussion about it. But even his one early right letters, which is still in the New Testament, because we have to go to the New Testament, he mentioned James, but he said, about who had seen Jesus after his crucifixion or raised to heaven, or that the 3 days, after Easter. Some of these are vague here, and some are contradictory a letter of Paul, and sometimes you have to see, as I said before, there is a tension here soon, and you can see between the family of Jesus and the brother of Jesus and the Pauline group and some other groups, between these Hebrews and Greek Hellenic converts to Christianity. Sometimes they want to downplay the role of family of Jesus. The same you have in the beginning of Islam, the tension between caliphs and Caliphate, Imamat. And, you see, for example, Omar famously said, Khilafat, prophethood and leadership cannot be combined in the same family. Much of the family of prophets or Bani Hashim would not give the commanding position. They would sideline, even Ansar were there. This tension is here, there too. So the Paul, you don't see they want to get any, Mary is not mentioned. Mary just even not named. It's just a woman. He said Paul said Jesus was born out of woman. If you look at carefully, you can see that we don't have time for that. But here he mentions the name of James, and then regarding himself, he's really thinking big of himself. He said he was in the form of God. Jesus, the form of God. Okay, this is his view. Maybe not. I don't know why I have it here, but all time. Yeah, it's not very relevant to a discussion. Okay, he was in the form of God. Paul wrote that he was born in the likeness of man. But you can see what kind of views he's spreading. Maybe that's a good part. But the point I want to say, because I want to say the conflict between Paul and James and the church in the Jerusalem and how it is the Christianity deviated. Paul holds particular contempt for the Jerusalem-based triumvirate James. You have to read carefully in translation. If you are a devout Christian nowadays, sometimes you don't notice what the language is. You harmonize it. You ignore it. But if you people read it carefully, Tabor does it. A few other scholars are now doing it nowadays. You clearly see it. So Paul holds particular contempt for Jerusalem-based triumvirate of James, Peter, and John. You see, I show you the name of the books which Bible New Testament has, and these are the three leaders of the church. New Testament, present New Testament, and Pauline group, except these are the leader of church. But he derived them as so-called pillars of the church. Whatever they are makes no difference to me. He said, whatever they decide, I don't care. Those leaders contribute nothing to me. He said, I get my knowledge, my faith directly from Jesus. I don't owe anything to them. You see, this kind of sentences is in his letters, certain early letters, certain letters. Then he said the apostles may have walked and talked with the living Jesus, or as Paul dismissively calls him, Jesus in the flesh. So he downplay, and he said we have two Jesus. Jesus which was in the world, Jesus of flesh, but I see the spirit of Jesus. But Paul, himself, walks with the divine Jesus. They have, according to Paul, conversation in which Jesus imparts secret instructions intended solely for his ears. So, I mean, he thinks he has seen or seen continuously Jesus in the divine form. I mean, there's no way to corroborate that. And then he says the apostles may have been handpicked by Jesus as they towed away on their field or brought off their fishing nets. You know how Jesus, if you go to the New Testament, you can see how find these students, how fish them, you know, kind of go for them to get them, hunting them, in the adding them to his thing. But then Paul looks to himself. But Jesus chose Paul before he was born. But Paul claims, these are his letters. Galatians is his letter. He's writing in Paul. But Paul claims, no, Jesus even chose me before I was born. He tells, I'm called by Jesus into apostleship while still in his mother's womb. You know, he said, when I was in mother's womb, Jesus considered me as his disciple. In other words, Paul does not, these are in New Testament, you know, these are New Testament, this not not apocryphal. In other words, Paul does not consider himself the 13th apostle. He thinks he's the first apostle. That's exactly what is happening. And then there are three meetings between James and Paul, James, the brother of Jesus and the leader of the church, which is come in the book of Acts, the New Testament. And then it's important. One of them, it seems, around 40 AD, and it seems this is early stage. They didn't know about deviant ideas of Paul. They sent Barnabas, if that Gospel of Barnabas, at this Gospel of Barnabas apparently is written by this Barnabas, which worked with Paul, knew Paul, initially was happy about Paul, but then he thinks Paul changes view. It could be. It could be his initial conversion was relatively sincere or somewhat, but then he has his own ideas, and then he said he can go with his own ideas, or he converted with his own ideas. But, you know, the Christianity today really is Paulinity. You know, it's more important. And the same way, second caliph has very important in some aspects. Not as Paul in Islam, because, but anyway, has important role in some trends of Islam. Second meeting in Jerusalem, 50 AD. Third meeting, 57 AD. And noticing James is martyred 62, and Paul is also, it seems, died by 66. And then at the meetings become more tense and hostile. And then the rivalry, the differences is picking up. So I will go through this. This is good, important for the history of the church. During the decade of the 50s, however, when Paul is writing his letters, his conception of Jesus as Christ would have been shocking and plainly heretical, which is why around 57, James and the apostles demand that Paul come to Jerusalem to answer for his deviant teaching. Look, the third meeting, he starts to deviate. Initially, we'll see that initially they brought him, okay, when he converted, he seems come to Jerusalem, the first 37 he converted, but they couldn't see him, and there were persecution by Jews and Romans. They were a small group, and then in 40, they somehow, then they start to spread Christianity, gain followers for himself. They hearing about him. First, they didn't trust him because he used to persecute Christians. Then they get to trust him. Then they arrange a meeting to see the leadership of the church. He met them and promised, I would do that. I would go establish the church in these cities. His missions are interesting, you know. I mean, the maps and how he active. He's very active. He's very organized. He's disciplined. But you know, their charges, also the accusation he collect money from people, and some pocketed him. I mean, these are detailed stories, interesting. But then they call him in 50 AD, after 10 years. They're hearing some stuff about him to cities outside the Palestine, you know, in mostly Turkey and Syria. And then so why we heard you were saying this, but it's not right. And then he promised that, no, I will see that. I'm not going, no, I don't need that. I will not do that. But then after a few years, they started, no, he's really off. He's very deviated. He's insistent. And then he brought back food, not just questioning, to reprimand, to control him, to promise he's not doing anything. This would not be Paul's first appearance before the movement leaders. And the 57 one, as he mentioned his letter to Galatians, he initially met the apostles on a visit to Holy City 3 years after his conversion around Fourth Common Era, when he came face to face with Peter and James. So his first meeting, it seems he has seen Peter and James. The two leaders were apparently thrilled that the one who had been persecuting us is now proclaiming the message of faith he was trying to destroy. Paul says, these are all, again, remember, the narration of the meeting all is from the Paul perspective. We don't know how truthful he is, but he says, Those guys that met me in 40 AD, they were happy that me who was persecuting Christians, joining them. It's similar to Omar too. You remember, Omar was also persecuting Muslims initially. I'm not sure how much maybe that story also. I mean, that story for now we accept it true, but how much of it? But the characters are very similar. So Omar was persecuting Muslims until uh, sometime in Mecca he converted to Islam, and then from persecutor Muslims. And then he went over there to kill his brother-in-law, the husband of her sister. And that's the story says. And then he read some verses of Quran, and then he converted and so on. Uh, he once tried to destroy. I mean that story could be true. It's a beautiful story, conversion of Omar, but I mean similarities are there. It's instantaneous. You know, he was angry. He went home of his brother-in-law sister. They hide the Quran, and then he find it, and then he read it, and he converted, and so on. Okay, they glory God because of Paul, and so the Peter and James were happy he converted. So they glory God because of Paul and sent him on his way to preach the message of Jesus in the region of Syria and Cilicia. I mean, I'm not focusing Paul. I want to say who's in charge. We don't have much document, you know. Like, for example, the issue of attacking the house of Hazrat Fatima. We need look to find sources. Okay, there are Shia sources, Sunni sources are corroborating. Here we are looking through the Pauline sources to say James is important. James is the leader of the church. James is the successor of Jesus. So that's the point. And then my goal is to motivating you not to say, okay, this James, this character, this person, which is called brother of Jesus, maybe really is a child of Mary. Giving him as his companion and keeper, a Jewish convert and close confidant of James named Barnabas. Yeah, James, it seems, put Barnabas uh, going with Paul to be helping him, teaching him, and looking him an eye on him. And this Barnabas, you see, write the Gospel of Barnabas, which is, irrespective of what Western scholarship has, is of high spirituality. The first time I read it, I was just to look those parts which were similar to Islam, rejecting divinity of Jesus, predicting the coming of Prophet Muhammad. But I read it one second time, which was with the parables, morality. It's for the one who is very, very interesting book in that sense. You feel divine spirituality. I mean, it's still there. And then Ayatollah Talabani is famous one, the father of the. They used to have meetings, some of these learned scholars sit together, that generation before Talabani himself, and then he read the book and used to cry, so the spirituality of it, I think is a good read if people want. Actually, it helped me to understand Christianity. I couldn't sense of these Gospels, you need a bridge to understand the spirituality. And this Barnabas also, Gospel of Barnabas is very beautiful, very interesting parable stories, much bigger than each of the Gospels. And I mean, that he needs itself a long story, a few lectures. Anyway, close confidant James named Barnabas. So this makes sense. You don't see Barnabas at the end initially goes with Paul, trusting him, but gradually seeing he's deviating. Or maybe he was deviated, hidden from Barnabas. That could be Barnabas didn't notice it from the early part, but the gospel is like that. Paul's second trip to Jerusalem took place about a decade later, sometimes around 50 CE, and was for less cordial than the first. The first day, we are happy you're joining us. So let's send you mission. The second time, no, it's not that happy. He had been summoned to appear before a meeting of the Apostolic Council, defending his self-designated role as missionary to the Gentiles. Paul insists he was not summoned to Jerusalem, but went on his own accord because Jesus told him so. So, the narration is different. The church people, maybe Book of Acts, because Book of Acts still is not written by Paul. And then we have some narration of that story that Paul was called to Jerusalem, but Book of Acts, which is somehow a history of the events of apostles after Jesus, disciples, which disciples are respected. Even the Quran, you look, there are very lofty verses about them, like Surah 61, the last verse, and so on. But Paul also wrote this story, although Book of Acts still is sympathetic to Paul, but so here, Book of Acts says they called him. They called him, come, I want to see you. Paul said, no, I went myself. Jesus told me to go over there. I see him dream. And then with his companion Barnabas and an uncircumcised Greek convert named Titus. So you see, the fact they get a convert to Christianity, and it was Greek, not even Hellen, Jewish, which and uncircumcised. This is the part. Paul stood before James, Peter, and John against the three names and the elders of the Jerusalem assembly to strongly defend the message he had been proclaiming to the Gentiles. He was more eager to go to the non-Jewish one, to the Hellenized one, and then, okay, part of it may be correct, because Quran says, Isa and Prophet Muhammad are Rahmatul Alameen, but inviting is not limited the message to the Hebrews or the Israelites, but on circumcision and other ones are, and other dietary laws and other stuff are not accepted. Uh, as I said, Luke writing about this meeting some 40 or 50 years later. So Luke is our historian in Book of Acts, writing about 40, 50 years later, paints the picture of perfect harmony between Paul and the council's members, with Peter himself standing up for Paul and taking his side. But if you read letter of Paul himself, is not cordial, So this some aspects. So maybe the correction of the last comment I have. The book, we have two narrations, Luke and Paul. They're not necessarily agree. Sometimes Luke has sharpened the corner and differences because reading later and more theology involved. Sometimes the truth comes from Paul letter. But in that case, which was last example, I think Paul himself said, okay, Jesus called me, but Luke said no, it was Paul. According to Luke, James in his so Luke, which wrote the book of Acts, says Peter sided with Paul and taking his side, which cannot be the case. We can see the other things which are there. According to Luke, James in his capacity as leader of the Jerusalem assembly and head of the apostolic council, lest Paul's teaching decreeing that the henceforth Gentiles would be welcome into the community without having to follow the law of Moses so long as they abstain from things polluted by idols, from prostitution, from eating things that have been strangled, and from blood. Okay, this can be true. I'm saying these are always the way. Even, for example, Iran, we have a presidential election in 2009, which is very controversial. They all meet the leader, and everybody come out and say a narration. Maybe one says all true, but all contradictory each other. I think the issue of calling non-Jews to Christianity must be a big debate among them. And when Jesus was open, you see many examples. Jesus was doing miracles, curing non-Jews, and receptive with them, and some also believe in him if we accept the Gospels. But the point is this: it could be because of the tradition Jews had, that the non-Jews, if living among the Jews from long time Bible, they don't need necessarily to follow the full halakha Sharia Jews, but they follow a minimum. Like the same, first for me was strange. I didn't agree with it. But then was some discussion. Look, in Iran, the Armenians or Jews are living in Iran. They do not necessarily need to bind by all the laws that Muslims should bind. Although outside the public is a little bit different, but for example, in the sports facilities, they don't need to cover hijab, for example, okay, or regarding drinking wine. So the request for the non-Ahl Kitab, people of the book, but non-Muslim is less than Muslims and vice versa, maybe. So maybe they get a compromise that, okay, in the legal matters, the non-Jews can be converted. They don't maybe need to be circumcised, but at least they must follow these, which these are the minimum. They're called Noahide laws, the laws of regulation for Noah. The basic people, at least these are very basic ones. The point which tension rises later on when we go to the beliefs. I mean, you cannot if you put the monotheism inside, called Jesus divine, then there's no compromise. And you see that's the part. Maybe they initially said, okay, let them convert and follow the morality. And then regarding the Sharia laws, okay, the halakha law is minimal. They don't do zina, they don't do go eating strangled means not eating blood, not eating dead animal, which Quran has all of these too. And then maybe also the one who would sacrifice given to the idols, because that rejects Tawheed. Paul's own account of the Apostolic Council, written a letter to Galatia not long after it had taken place, paints a completely different picture of what happened in Jerusalem. So look, Acts has much cordial view. Paul's letter is more hostile in this example. In the other example, Paul was himself saying, I went over there. Luke said he was called. So you see what he did, but we can see. But at least this one, which Paul says is more hostile, seems more true because it's really is not to the benefit of them to write it like this. Paul claims that he was ambushed as the Apostolic Council. There's a very different view. By a group of false believers. Now he says these guys are false believers. Those still accepting the primacy of the temple and Torah, who had been secretly spying on him as his ministry. So it's very, very different tone. I mean, they're false believers. They're still stick to the temple and Torah. They don't know we should reject them. We should pass them, surpass them, the new covenant. They spy on him. So you see, so it means they were suspicious of him too. They start to follow what he's saying. Although Paul reveals little detail about the meeting, cannot mask his rage at the treatment he says he received at the hands of the supposedly acknowledged leaders of the church, James, Peter, and John. So you see, James, at that level, Paul had to respond to him, but is not happy. Paul says he refused to submit to them, not even for a minute. Also, he shows a strong man. I didn't budge to them, as neither they nor their opinion of his ministry made any difference to him whatsoever. So in Galatians, he wrote that. These are certain as Paul letter. Whatever took place here is the oldest documents of New Testament. Whatever took place here in the Apostolic Council, it appears that the meeting concluded with a promise by James, the leader of the Jerusalem Assembly, not to compel Paul Gentile followers to be circumcised. Again, you see, because these are legal, when James compromised, okay, you converted some people, but okay, I don't push them to become circumcised. But because they're not Jews, so they interpreted that covenant was between Hebrews that but descended of Abraham. But the other things they should follow. But almost immediately after Paul left Jerusalem, but James is not happy. You know, James began sending his own. They noticed they cannot let Paul do the missionary, especially to non-Jews, and because he would distort the mission. So almost immediately Paul left Jerusalem. That is 50 A.D. James began sending his own missionaries to Paul congregation in Galatia, Corinth, Philippi. These are all cities. I mean, unfortunately, I didn't put the map. I had it in other slides, but maybe next time I'll show it to you. And most other places where Paul had built a following. So Paul goes to a city, work over there, put it in, convert, produce a congregation, and then collect some money, go to another city, and wandering itinerary preacher or converter, in order to correct Paul's unorthodox teaching about Jesus. But the thing I think worried them mostly on halakha laws is the views about Jesus and divinity. Paul was incensed by this delegation, but Paul was upset that they are sending delegations parallel to him, which he viewed correctly as the threat to his authority. Almost all the Paul epistles in the New Testament were written after the Apostolic Councils and are addressed to congregations that had been visited by this representative from Jerusalem. So much of these letters of Paul, which have become sacred documents of New Testament, actually are complaints of Paul or reprimands of Paul, or Paul's talking to his community. Don't listen to these guys. Why are you influenced by these guys? They're not right. I am right. I'm the real messenger of Jesus, or apostle of Jesus. Paul's first letter to Thessalonians was written between 48 and 50. His last letter to Romans was written 56. So his letters are all this period. The one in 48 to 56, especially 50 to 56, are this tense period, which before this also 48 must be not good that they call him. That is why these letters devote so much space to defending Paul's status an apostle. He wants to prove the new Christian, because the new Christians here, okay, the people in Jerusalem do not agree with Paul. Those real followers of Jesus, apostle of Jesus, do not agree with the Paul. So he has to defend. No, I am the true one. Those guys do nothing. I am the true apostle. Touting his direct connection to Jesus and railing against the leaders in Jerusalem who were disguising themselves as apostles of Christ, disguising them. So he didn't see Christ, and then he's accusing them. I mean, the same we have Muawiyah later on as the true champion of Islam, all those Amr As, even the children of Akram ibn Abu Jahl, Khalid ibn Walid, these all become the true representatives of Islam. On Paul's view, actually servants of Satan who have bewitched Paul's followers. But the activity of James has effect, and many of those guys start to doubt Paul and start to look back to Jerusalem and changing their beliefs. And there's some other events happening. Most of the letters are addressing the internal issues this congregation Paul established had. James' delegation said to have an impact for Paul repeatedly lambasted his congregation for abandoning him. I'm amazed how quickly you have deserted the one who called you, Galatians. He implores his followers not to listen to these delegations or to anyone else for that matter, but only to him. So, he established these delegations. I mean, whether also he was making money out of them, there's a question. There are some signs because some of letters said he was charging. It wasn't that free, okay? But let's put that aside. That his motivation wasn't money making. His congregation wasn't money making instruments for him. But the point is that he was upset. For example, he said again, if anyone else preaches the gospel contrary to the gospel you received, the message you received from me, let him be damned. So there are people are doing that. He's now, you see, the nemesis, the rival, the enemy for him now is Jerusalem church, and the head of them, James. Even if what gospel comes from an angel, and then he said, even if that gospel, the gospel, he said, if anyone preaches the gospel contrary to the gospel you received from me, let him be damned. Even if that gospel comes from an angel in heaven, Paul writes his congregation should ignore it. Galatians 1:8. Instead, they should obey Paul and only Paul, be imitator of me as of I am Christ. But the third meeting, but by the year 57, the rumors about Paul teaching could not longer be ignored. And then he has moved from relaxation or changing on practical matters to the essential belief matters. He started to distort. He's summoned to Jerusalem to answer for himself. This time, James confronts Paul directly, telling him that he has come to their attention that Paul has been teaching believers to forsake Moses and not circumcise their children or observe the customs of the law, and this time even some Jews or Hebrews, ethnically Jews. Paul does not respond to the accusation, though this is exactly what he has been teaching. He has been gone so far as to say that those who let themselves be circumcised will have cut themselves off from Christ. Now he reversed it. If you circumcise by circumcision, you have separated yourself from Jesus or Christ. That means not only was a wajib, now becoming haram. To clear up matters once for all, James forces Paul to take part with 4 other men in a strict purification ritual in temple. This is something, you go like a tova, penitence, and take him to temple. This is very serious matter now. The same temple that Paul believes has been replaced by the blood of Jesus, but it shows the authority, the power of James that can demand him, bring him, and force him to go to the temple and repent. And these are all in New Testament. Look, the same, like I say, the events of attacking of the house of Prophet, house of the Fatima is recorded to authentic Sunni Hadith books. Okay, we don't have that level for attack of. We have it, but it's not in Bukhari, for example. But this is in the sacred present New Testament. The same temple that Paul believes has been replaced by the blood of Jesus, so that all we know there is nothing to the rumors said about you, that you observe and guard the law. James leave for him an open escape route, that you come and do this swearing that these are not your views, but it means that he shouldn't repeat, or because after that he could be punished, something like that. James is polite. All we know, if you do the swearing, going to temple and going to the ritual purification, all we know there is nothing to the rumors said about you, but they know the rumors are true and that you observe and guard the law. They want to compromise because their minority is an inside fight. Like they are minority persecuted by Jews and Romans on one side. Now internal strife is there, so they want to keep Paul as far as they can. Paul apparently obeys because it seems the pressure is so serious. He seems to have no choice in that matter, but as he completed the ritual, this is a complicated story. Let me escape, but it could be Paul was really working with Roman authority. Paul had the Roman citizenship, so I don't know what was spy or collaborating with them. and he was freely going because they saved him somehow. Apparently, they arrested him, but effectively saved him. But it's completing the ritual, a group of devout. This is edited, really. You know, I mean, if you're devout Christian, you read it somewhere else. You like Paul, but if you not, you can read it differently. But as he's completing the ritual, a group devout of Jews recognized him. Men of Israel, they shout, "Help! This is the man who has been teaching everyone everywhere against our people, our law, this place." It's surprising that Jews now are complaining of this Paul. Maybe they heard about his divinity of Jesus message, and they start to raise not the Christians, not the James group, some other Jews, which maybe come to Jerusalem and recognize him from other cities. The Jews do not like Christians, and especially, I think James was respected. His ideas was not out of the Judaism, stick them on the halacha, he doesn't divinity of Jesus. But Paul was outside the frame, so some of the Jews get accepted. At least appearances that all at once the mob descends upon Paul. They seized him and dragged him out of the temple. Just as they are about to beat him to death, a group of Roman soldiers suddenly appears. This is strange. The soldiers break up the mob and take Paul into custody, not because of disturbance at the temple, but because mistaking him for one else. That's the appearance of the story. Like you have this guy, HTS guy, somehow is Al Qaeda, but tomorrow is the president. I don't know. You shake hands with him. This guy is supposedly bad guy. They arrest him. They took him to custody, but they protect him effectively. Are you not? At least the claim is that are you not the Egyptian who same day ago led a revolt in wilderness of 4,000 Sakari? They were some Egyptian do the rebellion. They thought it's him, but if it was him, they would kill him. And then they took him to military tribune. But then Paul said, "Okay, I don't because I'm Roman citizen. I want you to take me to Rome." You know, for example, you arrest the guy. The guy said, "Oh no, I don't want you to take me to Saudi to go to a court. I want to go to U.S. court." You know. The more trustworthy narrative regarding James. Okay, this is the kind of the end of story we have about their interaction of Paul and James, and then this latter part of the story goes James, Paul, and Peter, and so on, because we have short in time. For now, I skip it. But I want to go to the Martyrdom of Jesus, because Martyrdom of James, brother of Jesus, because that's interesting and very effective, you know. And then again, shows another dimension of him. And then I want to have a brief time, and things get a little bit longer to a little bit also go into the book of James as far as we can. So but the more trustworthy, now we go to the Martyrdom of James. So the story of Paul is finished, the confrontation and so on. James, as we said, 62 AD was martyred, a few years before the revolt of Jews, big revolt of Jews, and then 8 years before the destruction of Jerusalem. Actually, Josephus, will see, Josephus, the historian, thinks one of the reasons Jerusalem was destroyed totally, still from there, you know, the second temple was destroyed till now. They want to build the third temple, is the way that the people of the city treated the just man, James. Let's read it. The more trustworthy narrative regarding James' death is to find in Josephus, who relates in the year 62 AD, the high priest Ananus, son of Ananus the elder. These are a priestly class which are getting dominant in the temple after the era of Zechariah. You know, because remember, Zechariah was about the time of birth of Jesus. So this is about 60 years later, so they're dominant. The high priest Ananus, son of Ananus the elder, seized upon the opportunity offered by the death of Procurator Festus and the delay which as the occasion in the arrival of his successor Albinus to put to death James and the just with several others who were probably Christians also. Look, there was a rule. Romans had the block that nobody should be killed because Romans are directly ruling. But a ruler of Romans have been died, Festus, and then the new ruler didn't come. So is it like the way like we have here in Senate appointment in the holiday or whether it's Senate not in session and then you can appoint somebody because the ruler was died and the new ruler wasn't there. There was some freedom by the leader of the Jews, which is the leader of Sanhedrin, the big council of the Jews, this Ananus guys, which is these are the people in temple which Jesus also clashed with them. So they don't like Jesus. You know, all the 30 years passed, they know the family of Jesus. The fact that Jesus go over there and throw away all the tables and accuse them you're money making, deceiving people, something like that. So they remember that. So in this period, they find occasion to arrest James and and persecute and take him to kind of kill him, accusing him, and then going to the court and killing him, sentencing him. Ananias accused James before the Sanhedrin of violating the Jewish law, and although technically the Sanhedrin had no right to carry out the sentence, they were able to effect the stoning of James. They stoned him. They throw him. Actually, if you go back to, I mean, I'm shortening the story. It's a very affecting story. Look, they took him. This is a picture. They took him to the top of the building and throw him down, and then still alive and beating him to death. And then so he's such a pious man, and then because these are Jewish ones want to get they would, because they're making money from the temple. That's a very big thing. They were working with Romans. They used people's sacrifices. So all this was there. So okay, I want I want to say something, but I have to go to the book to stop. I want to see the features. Look, important enigma challenge of the family of Jesus. James, the features I want to summarize fast and then go a little from the book and then stop. James, the beloved disciple of Jesus. This is the feature because part of the Gospel of John referring somebody beloved disciple of Jesus without complete specific, but it must be James. James, a designated successor of Jesus. We find in the Gospel of Thomas, the leader of church after Jesus, which we cite. You may be not designated successor, then become the leader. But the Shia Islam, we believe Imam Ali was designated successor, but didn't become the leader. But the leader becomes somebody else. But you could be designated and also the leader. James and the other members of the family of Jesus and apostles of the disciple church in Jerusalem represented the true Christianity, the religion of Jesus, in contrast to Polytheism, religion of Jews. Let me write this couple of slides too. Look, his personality, life, leadership of the church, and confrontation with Paul, martyrdom in the hand of the temple authority, chief Jewish rabbi is his teacher. Distinguish a few related things regarding James the Just. The Epistle of James, which is still in the New Testament, is interesting. Look, I'm going to see a little bit of it as far as time allows. I will stop a few minutes, really. The point is this. I think the closest book the whole New Testament canon, which is to the Islamic view, is Book of James, and we'll see some stat about the Book of. I'm not saying without problem, because even ascribing this to James is not certain. It was maybe the circle closer to the James, closer to the family of Jesus, and for this reason it was included. But it could be edited too, like other books we see for the Gospel of James and so on. But interestingly, as I look, for example, to the Paul, which is considered about 40-50% of New Testament, you don't have any teaching of Jesus. Very, very few. The name of Jesus is not mentioned. It's nothing specific of Jesus. Just as a name, just a character goes on a cross. The name of Mary is not there. But somebody counted, if you have 300 teachings of Jesus, this Epistle of James, which is a very small letter, is not a book even, has 30 of them, more than any 30 of teaching of Jesus repeated. So this is, you see, Paul doesn't know Jesus, doesn't talk to Jesus, doesn't know any message of Jesus, just some ambiguous character for him to use it, to do his message, his understanding. But you will see that in Epistle of James, things are different, and some similarity to Qur'an, if I can show. And then even you see the proto-gospel of James is associated to James. We know it's heavily edited, but the idea they claim that this is written by James, but at least must be some of the ideas about their Mary with the childhood, her birth, the mother vow, and the birth of Jesus and other stuff. This is known by the circle of the family. Other was distorted the same, but you also know about, for example, the birth of our Savior, other stuff much better than other people. So other writings such as Book of James, or the Gospel of James, associated to James or belong to the movement which consider James as a leader and successor of Jesus. Then the group of James, the group that kept maybe through Christianity, the group that they were Jewish Christian, the group that kept the Sharia and it doesn't believe divinity of Jesus, doesn't believe in Paul, and called Ebionites, the humbles, the poor, the down-to-earth, the Fruitans or something like that. Foghara sometimes, the Jewish Christian movement, which after the martyrdom of James is 66 AD and the destruction of Jerusalem, martyrdom of James is 62 AD, and then the destruction of Jerusalem followed the teaching of Jesus, example of James. That may be related to more the other brother, the Simon, which take the leadership of the church in year 62 after martyrdom of James, which I think next lecture I will briefly go to it, to the connecting it to the life of the mother of Zaman. These books which we discussed, Act is largely edited more to the Pauline. I don't want to go through that. There is a Gospel of this sentence I want to read, and then maybe I stop, and then if I want examples, I'll put it next time. The Gospel of Thomas is interesting because about James. Look, there is the apocryphal gospel, and this gospel has two features, very interesting features. First is only sayings of Jesus. It's not that okay, Jesus is walking from so and so, like see that, and then see something, say that, and then many stories about other people. It's just a collection of a saying of Jesus. This gospel was lost. People know this existed, but it's discovered in 1945. So the Gospel of Thomas was discovered in Upper Egypt in 1945 outside the village of Nag Hammadi. All the text itself dates to the 3rd century, but scholars have shown that it preserved despite later theological embellishment an original Aramaic document. This is Aramaic, contrary to otherwise Greek, that comes to us from the early days of Jerusalem church. Because it's Aramaic, it's the language of people, it brings to Hebrew group, not the Hellenist group of the Christians or Jews. It provides a rare glimpse into what scholars have called Jewish Christianity, that is the earliest followers of Jesus led by James. The Gospel of Thomas is not a narrative of the life of Jesus, but rather a listing of 114 of his sayings or teachings. And then 114 is interesting, but I don't know how much it is accident or 114 surahs or so on. But saying 12 is of our interest. The disciples asked Jesus, said to Jesus, "We know you will live us. Who is going to be our leader then?" This is not Islamic, nothing is just the Gospel of Thomas discovered in 1945. Jesus said to them, "No matter where you go, and you are to go to the James the Just, for whose sake heaven and earth came into being." This is somehow, we have in Shia hadith, regarding if you weren't there, I wouldn't create heaven and earth, is a respect. But Jesus said that James is so good, so pious, that is one of reason and motivation to earth be created. Look, this is the idea. God would tell the angels, why I created. They told him, why created this human being, which is due corruption in there, spilling blood and those stuff. And God said, I know something you don't know. What God knew was out of this progeny of Adam come people like Imam Hussein, like Hassan, or Jesus or Prophet Muhammad, Imam Ali, which are exemplary examples of piety, worshiping God. So we can say those are the reasons, motivation for creation. I'm not saying other people are there and other reasons God wants to do, manifest his qualities and do kindness. But when you have, for example, a football or university, you're looking at the best students. Sometimes there was I don't want to mention, but sometimes you have a school. I don't want to mention names, but for example, the principal can say, okay, if I can make 2 students like this one, I'm successful in the school or university I'm making. You know what I mean? The reason, the motivation making universities to make scientists or engineers to be successful. So this is James. They have few of these. There is a dedicated names that they believe there was not only James, but the people like James, and Jesus explicit. These are the type God really liked. But it's respection of James. Here we have an outright statement from Jesus himself that is handing over the leadership and spiritual direction. Is moving to James. Look, this is like Nas and Wasiya, like we have a Qutb al-Badir. This is Qutb al-Badir of Jesus regarding James. Jesus' extravagant and qualified statement reminds one the honor that he paid to his kinsman, John the Baptizer, more than prophet. Jesus said the same thing about Yahya, more than the prophet and the greatest among those born of woman. Jesus said about Yahya, he's the biggest of born out of a woman of his generation. So both John the Baptist and the James are getting this honor. Okay, I stop here. Next lecture, maybe you have time, I would discuss a little bit examples of the Epistle of James. These parts I will skip because I don't think we have. Uh, yeah, I mean, uh, uh, this. Let me start with this one because I'm not going to discuss the whole this Ebionite Jewish Christianity, the follower of James, the one who kept through Christianity, and what happened to them after James or first generations. Maybe a little bit next lectures, but the questions we should ask: what is the picture they have from Jesus? They're not looking to him divine. They were opposing Paul. What their understanding of the law was contrary to Paul that abolished the law. They followed the law, and what their history was, and then all of these Ebionites, which we have recorded them in history to second, third century, revered James, the just brother of Jesus and leader of Jerusalem church, as the successor of Jesus, rather than Peter, an exemplar of righteousness. So we have a group in history with these views, besides the Gospel of Thomas, which was discovered. Okay, and then, as I said, this epistle of James, how many time, how much time we have, or what do you think?
We have another 10 minutes. So, and I don't see any questions. So, I mean, if you want to take the whole 10 minutes, please.
So I will do that and maybe a few minutes. If any question or something, yeah. Look, look, there are other stuff to say regarding which maybe I say some of these about what happened after James, which next lecture I was going to say. But for now, I said there is a group of Ebionites, which humblers or whores. Sometimes people translate, but mostly humblers. That these are a true follower of Jesus, and James was the leader. And as I said, that sentence from Gospel of Thomas, which explicitly Jesus said following is important. But we have this epistle of James in the Bible. And now we can open it. It's not very long and you can read it. And I recommend people have time, open it, go internet, epistle of James, and read it themselves and see how they feel. You don't feel you're reading a book of typical. You don't feel something offended. You don't find something, oh, again, Lord Jesus, God Jesus. There are some Lord, and there is some minor addition, but there are some features in it as I said, it is here and it is put general and time wise. Actually, look, this although this is more maybe Christian view, he put it very early, which I think it is early, but the core of it. Scholarly ones put it later, but this is from the Protestant Christian circles. It is early, really, if it's aside to James, but some part of it is edited. So the questions regarding Epistle of James, who was the author, sometimes they say James, sometimes the Circle of James, some people edit it, but it is somehow related to James. Some views maybe of him, but people written it. When it was written, what situation was written, to whom it was written, because it's a letter, which theological tradition from the background for the epistle. We don't answer these, uh, and I don't want to go through that. So but there are some parts of it interesting. Uh, the one some person, unfortunately, I forgot the name, and I'm going to, I forgot to put the reference, and I'm going to put it next time to show where I look at it. Some person had the idea. I got the idea too. I mean, one time I was looking to some hadiths, Shia hadiths about Jesus, and I was looking whether the sentences ascribed to Jesus that Shia hadith. I can find it in Bible. Okay, it's a little complicated thing. It wasn't that straight match, but I was surprised. I wasn't very familiar with the books. The most interesting match, always the book called James. That started to cut my attention and so on. But look, there are some examples, and this matching is not all done with me. The lower part is the Quranic one. The upper part are the verses uh, from the James book, which, for example, you see this one is James 1, 2, 4, and Quran 2, 155, 57. There was one other previous match which I wasn't, that it is there, but it wasn't full. Let's go to the other one. For example, consider pure joy, my brother and sister, whenever you face trials of many kinds. That's what James. Because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So this is advice, and then you see matches kind of the Quranic one, uh, and the spirit. We shall surely test you with a measure of fear and hunger and a loss of wealth and lives and fruits, and give good news to the patient. Those who, when an affliction was at them, say, indeed we belong to God, and to him do we indeed return. It is they who receive the blessing of the Lord and his mercy, and his who they are guided. Also is related to patience. So you see this spirit of the verses of Baqarah, which are famous, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un, is matches these verses of James letter. Then this one, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault. Just ask God, God will give it to you. And he will give it to you. This is very close to Quran. Look, it says, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي أَنِّي فَإِنِّي غَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ دَاعٍ إِذَا دَعَانِ فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُم يَرْشُدُونَ. When my servant asks me about me, tell them that I'm indeed nearmost. I answered this part. I answered the supplicant's call when he calls me. So let them respond to me and let them have faith with me so that they pray rightly. So if you ask God, God will give you. That's exactly what James said. If you lack something, wisdom, ask God. He gives you generously without finding. It doesn't. God doesn't say, "Oh, you don't deserve it. You're not good. You didn't do your prayer on time last time. I don't give you." No. If you ask God, if it's good for you, it's reasonable. God will, because it's very absolute. God said, "Eza da'ani falestajibu." If the prayer is good for you, it's possible if we will give it, either here or hereafter. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt. You see, James adds, when you ask God, you must ask, not doubt, because the one who doubts is like wave of the sea blown and tossed by the wind. And then another verse of Quran matches, إنما المؤمنون الذين آمنوا بالله ورسوله ثم لم يرتابوا وجاهدوا مع أنفسهم أنفسهم في سبيل الله وأولئك الصادقون. The verses are beautiful. We can connect to this. James are different than the usual ones. The faithful are only those who have attained faith in God and his apostle, and then have never doubted. Okay, inshallah, we all reach that state. And who wage jihad with their positions and the persons in the way of God. It is they who are the truthful. Let me skip some of it because I want to finish the most important one. Yeah, this is one of the most interesting ones of all. Look what it says. Now listen. This is the chapter 4 of this book, James. Now listen, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, and spend a year there, carry on business and make money. Why you do not even know what will happen tomorrow? What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will leave and do this or that. That means we shouldn't forget. Saying means that we shouldn't forget. We should have in mind that Quran says, we always say, inshallah. That's what the culture custom Muslims are. وَلَا تَقُولَنَّ لِشَيْءٍ. This is exact match. وَلَا تَقُولَنَّ لِشَيْءٍ إِنِّي فَاعِلٌ ذَلِكَ غَدًا Allah and Yasha Allah. Don't say I do something tomorrow. Don't say about anything I will indeed do it tomorrow without adding God willing. Allah inshallah. وَاذْكُرْ رَبَّكَ إِذَا نَسِيتَ. And when you forget, remember your Lord and say, بَقُولْ عَسَىٰ أَنْ يَهْدِينَ رَبِّي لَأَقْرَبَ مِنْ هَٰذَا رَشَدًا. If you forget, remember your Lord and say, maybe Lord will guide me to something more akin to rectitude than this. And then the other one, which is again a good match. Brothers and sisters, do not slander one another. This is James saying, and Gospel of James. Anyone who speaks against a brother or sister or judge them speaks against the law and judges. And then Quran says, oh, you have faith, let not any people ridicule another people. It may be that they are better than they are. And no one let the woman ridicule women. It may be that they are better than they are. And do not defame one another or insult one another by calling nicknames, how evil or profane names subsequent to feed. But although, honestly, Quran is much loftier, much higher, more general. I mean, I'm saying it's connection, but clearly see Quran is higher level. Like somebody writes a composition, it's 8th grader, 6th grader, 12th grader, university, literate. But anyway, the connection is there. The same spirit, the same words. The whole gospel is matching Quran. And as for those who are not penitent of their past conduct, such are the wrongdoers. Okay, what's the next one? Yeah, there is one interesting match. This time I have the verse early, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر. Human beings are in loss. إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Amal al-Salahat is the crucial. Belief is important. Amal al-Salahat is important. Except those who have faith and do righteous deeds and enjoy one another to follow the truth and enjoy one another to patience. Amal al-Salah tawasaw bil-haqq tawasaw bis-sabr. Okay, look, this Epistle of James, Luther, Martin Luther, the famous reformer of Christianity, Protestants to come out of him, didn't like this epistle. In his publication, put it at the end. He wanted to throw it out of the canonical Bible, but that was very scandalous, especially the one who emphasized the authority of Bible. Catholic Church wasn't okay. Let's come together. Catholic Church believed in authority of Church and the Bible, but Protestant didn't believe in authority of Church and only believe in the Bible. But despite this, and they literally, now we have fundamentalist Protestant, like they think they're somehow literalists. But despite this, Luther didn't like this book. I want to put it out. And actually, I didn't put that slide. I forgot. But the point is this. Because of what? Because Luther believed in grace. If you talk even Christians, just believe in Jesus. Believe in Jesus as Savior. And then faith only save you, not deeds, not works. I think Luther's view is a little more complicated, but honesty is reduced. Just born again, believe Jesus is Savior, and that's it. Then that you absolve your sins, and then your salvation come to you. Look, I listen to many of the preachers, like Billy Graham is a great speaker. I like it. I listen to him, but all his talking, I listen to some selection of his talk. All his active talking is to push you to that moment, that accepting a Savior. All his speech, lecture is to prepare you to that feeling inducing you and accepting a Savior. And then that's the primacy of grace to the work, to the deed, to the action. But grace is there, but it must be completed by amal al-salahat. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا but amal al-salahat. And then he doesn't like, because this verse in James. What good is, my brother and sister, if someone claims to have faith but has no deed? Can such a faith save them? Suppose a brother or sister, this is Luther, didn't like, a sister without clothes and daily food. If one says to it, then go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does not something about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, it is not accompanied by action, is dead. Because this is so clearly against what Luther was preaching, and Luther didn't like this book. But someone would say you have faith, and that's the scholarship would put it aside, because much of the Western scholarship is under influence of Protestantism. I would stop it. But someone would say you have faith, I have deeds, to show my your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by my deeds. You believe that there is one God, good. Even the demons believe that and shudder. Oh, this is powerful. Right? Just saying I believe in God is not enough. You foolish person, Shaitan. We have the Quran. Shaitan is the first person believing God and swear in the name of God, because in the name of you I will deceive these people. You foolish person, you want evidence that faith without deeds is useless. Was not our father Abraham considered righteous for what he did when he offered his son Isaac on the altar? You see that his faith and his action were working together, and his faith was made complete by what he did. This part of the sentence of James is very powerful. It seems there were groups among the people, early Christians, were going that direction. It could be Pauline people. I mean, that every controversy have a traces in text. Luther used that traces, like we have this. I don't want to say. There are traces, a Christian text, because Paul, other one that justify Luther going that direction. But okay, other people, Catholics are more emphasizing. I'm not saying it's black and white, but Catholics are more emphasizing indeed the word. And the scripture was fulfilled that says Abraham believed God and it was credited to him as righteousness, and he was called God's friend. You see that the person considered righteous by what they do and not by faith alone. Taming the tongue. Look, this is also important Islamic view. Taming, likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body. It makes great boast. Look, we have lots of in Islamic Sufism morality about Quran has fasting of not speaking, Sam, what I said, چو زبان تو گویایی مرا من چه گویم تو را. If you talk, the one who talking for me, how I can talk to you and control you. I mean, okay, let's go forward. And then this one is also interesting. I think we'll finish with, we have two more. This one is very interesting. Above all, my brothers and sisters, do not swear, not by heaven or by earth, by anything else. All you need to say is simple yes or no. Otherwise, you'll be condemned. That swearing to God is not a simple thing. Unfortunately, our culture is so kind of wallah, and then we have hadith from Ibn Zaman Zain al-Abidin, which 2 days from now is the birthday. There was a case he had to go to the court, and he was right, but he asking you, I will give it to you, Rasulullah, but you need to swear. He said, no, swearing to God is so big, I don't want, I prefer. This wants to teach us. Because he's swearing to God, if you don't do it, if you rely on it, you don't stick to it, punishment will come. That's the moment you lose your faith. You have to take it seriously. Look, this is the wisdom. The wisdom is common between Muslims, Christians. Above all, my brother and sister, do not swear, not by heaven or by earth or by anything else. I mean, when not heaven by earth, definitely not by God. All you need to say simple, yes or no, I will do it. Otherwise, you will condemn. And the last one, prayer of faith. Is anyone among you in trouble? Let them pray. Is anyone happy? Let them sing songs of praise. Tasbih, dua. Is anyone among you sick? Let them call the elders of the church, pray over them, and anoint them with oil in the name of the Lord. Okay, actually, this is a negative one. That's the one I forgot. This is the only one I see negative. I find. Okay. And the prayer offered in faith will make the sick person well. The Lord will raise them up. If they have sinned, they will forgive it. Till here is okay. It's good. We pray for each other. People say, we always say, please pray for me. But this is the last one, which I think may be added. This is the only one which we don't agree. Because I was looking at the book of James, I said the good parts, the positive parts. But to be fair, scientifically, when I read it, I have to find the one I say, okay, this is not match with Islamic view. Therefore, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. This we don't accept. We shouldn't confess the sins between you and God. Those kind of game, that they mean people use against you. You only have to confess to God. The prayer of righteous person is powerful and effective. This sentence may be added. The prayer of righteousness is powerful. If you pray for me, it's important. I'm very thankful to you. It helps. God wants to do that. So these 13, 14, 15, good. The early part of 16 is not good. But you see how some part of it is so powerful spiritually. Some matches of us. So my conclusion, this James, with such a character, with such a position, with such a verse says, the leader of the church is called brother of Jesus. Okay, why not accept him as truly child of Mary? How it cannot come from that lineage? What is no objection for us? There is no objection. We don't object marrying after Mary. Okay, we had the miracle, the first child without father, but then he can marry, have children, and so on. Okay, I'll stop here with this verse. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قالت الملائكة يا مريم إن الله اصطفاك وطهرك واصطفاك على نساء العالمين يا مريم ابنتي ربك واسجدي واركعي مع الراكعين. And when the angel said, O Mary, Allah has chosen you and purified you, He has chosen you above the world's women. O Mary, be obedient to Lord and prostrate and bow down with those who bow in worship. Thank you very much for your attention.